Carrington Smith, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure to be with you. It was a pleasure getting to know you a little bit in the pre-interview, and we've been preparing for this episode for a while now. I'm super excited to talk about gratitude and how we can keep an optimistic, positive mindset as we look for the gifts all around us in life, in our home relationships, our community relationships, but also in the workplace. And we're living in a day and age with a lot of strife, a lot of challenges. There's no question that there's a lot of heartache in the world and a lot of frustrations and pain and suffering. And frankly, a lot of people in organizations are feeling burnt out. That's part of the reason why people are looking for greener pastures and switching jobs and going to other places. And there's a time and a place for all of that. Like sometimes we need to get out, we need to move, we need to make a change, and that's fine. But we also, I think part of it's mindset, and part of it is just our ability to recognize the good that's around us, to recognize the value in all of the blessings and gifts that we experience each and every day, and sometimes kind of get buried underneath the challenges and all of the other frustrations that we might be experiencing. So that's what we're going to be exploring today. I know you work on something called the Gratitude Project and with the Blooming Foundation. So we're going to talk about what those are, and we're going to talk about basically how can we look for the good around us so that we can thrive. As we get started, I wanted to share Carrie's bio with everybody. Carrie Smith worked as a trial lawyer for 7 years and then left the practice of law to pursue her passion for connecting people, businesses, and ideas. Today, as the owner of an executive search firm, a keynote speaker, and a Forbes Human Resources Council member, she finds joy in helping companies and executives make authentic, value-based connections that align with their long-term goals. She created Blooming Foundation to help the disadvantaged women and especially single moms get a hand up. She resides in Austin, Texas with her 2 teenage boys, the greatest source of love and joy in her life. I think that is fantastic. It's a pleasure to have you. Anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in?
I think you got it covered.
Well, very, very good. So why don't we start? Tell us a little bit about the Blooming Foundation, and then we'll talk a little bit about the Gratitude Project.
Sure. So in this last year, I wrote a book. It's available on Amazon. It's called Blooming: Finding Gifts in the Shit of Life. And I use that word very intentionally because it's a double entendre. Basically, we refer, colloquially on a daily basis about all the shit we've got going on or all the horrible things going on. But the reality is that shit is quite literally fertilizer. And basically, it's the hardships in our life that if we go back and we really look and examine them, that's where we find the gifts that we need to grow and bloom into our greatness. So in conjunction with the book, I launched the foundation, Blooming Foundation. I always knew I wanted to have a foundation. I've always been passionate about helping others. But as I was writing the book, I really keyed into how, like myself, a lot of single moms, really don't get the support they need, particularly if they don't have any family. You think of Mother's Day and all the married moms are having spa days, they're going to Mother's Day brunch. And the mothers that work the hardest, the single moms, don't get any recognition. It's just another day taking care of the kids. And so the foundation is to provide support and resources to particularly single moms who need a hand up or a day off.
Yeah. That's really, really awesome. And I applaud you for those efforts. It's really tremendous. And the reality is, again, like you said, we all deal with stuff. By the way, I love the title of your book.
Thank you.
It's perfect. We all deal with it, right? We all have stuff, and some people have to deal with more than others for sure. And certainly disadvantaged and marginalized populations have to deal with even more than others. And so if we can just recognize, and validate the fact that, there are hard things that everyone's dealing with. We don't want to sweep it under the rug. We don't want to ignore it. It's not about being Pollyanna-ish and pretending like everything's good when it's not. That's not what we're talking about.
No.
So maybe you can lay out a little bit of the difference, for someone who might be skeptical and say, well, yeah, we're just going to put blinders on and pretend like
Yeah.
everything's fine. How is what you're talking about a little bit different?
Right. Well, so in my book, I walk through some truly horrific experiences that I've been through. I'm going to open the book with being raped in college. And it's one of those events where people go, well, how can you find good in that? And I walk the reader through the journey of how horrible it was and all the work it took to get to the other side of it. So the worst thing you can do is shove something under the rug. I mean, I refer to trauma as like the monster under the bed. If you don't deal with it, it will come back and get you. So you have to face it. But what I'm saying is, once you get to the other side, and actually even as you go through the trauma, one of my favorite sayings is, with adversity comes opportunity. And if you can embrace that as you're going through something truly hard and really difficult, if you have that in the back of your brain, you're looking for the opportunity in it or the gift in it. So at least, on some level, there's something on the other side. And so going through a lot of difficult experiences in my life, I learned that by going back, examining them, and actually claiming them, I was able to discover the gifts in the horrific experience. And for instance, with being raped, I learned that I had incredible emotional resilience and that I was a survivor. And then by using that gift from that experience, it helped to propel me through life and really helped me professionally, in that it's kind of like, once you've been through something that hard, it's like, this is nothing, I've been through some really difficult stuff. I can handle a lot. And another example I use in my book is about the gift of intuition. And I had a really hard childhood. I had a malignant narcissist for a father who, we never knew when he was going to blow up at any given moment. And so I was always walking on eggshells. And so as an adult, someone said to me, what's your greatest gift you have? And I said, well, it's intuition. And they said, well, where did you get that from? And it dawned on me that I got it from, kind of growing extra long nerve endings, trying to always navigate when he was going to blow up next. As a young child, I developed this superpower of intuition to help me survive. But as I got older and left that environment, it became this massive gift, in particular with what I do now in executive search. I meet people, I immediately know things about them that no one else in the room does. It's really a gift. But the other thing about learning that was a gift that I got from that experience is it helped me to forgive my father. I suddenly realized if I had gratitude for the gift that I received, I had to have gratitude for the path that birthed it. Boy, that's a hard concept. But once I realized, wow, I wouldn't have this gift if I hadn't gone through that, and I wouldn't change anything, it helped me reach a place of forgiveness for my father, and really embrace the gift and move past all that stuff in the past.
Yeah, and not to excuse any bad behavior, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing all of that with me and with my audience. And I'm so sorry you had to deal with those things. And again, not to give a pass to any bad behavior to anybody, but to also, to recognize that hurt people, right?
Right.
We all have baggage and we all have scars, and those who tend to hurt people the most often tended to be those who were hurt the most, particularly in their youth and formative years. And so that, again, doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it allows us to have a little bit of compassion and forgiveness for people who may do and say hurtful, damaging things.
Right.
And then what that does is it's just freeing, right? So we don't have to ruminate on those things that cause pain, and again, acknowledge the pain, but we don't have to ruminate on it and sit in that forever. We can learn and grow and heal and move past it, and then recognize, as you've done, recognize the good that has come from it, the things we have learned, Perhaps it's just things we've learned that we never want to do, or things
Yeah,
that we know we hope to be different with our kids in the future, or a different kind of a boss in the workplace. That's a great lesson to learn, and that is a gift, even if it came from a painful source.
exactly. And as you say, bad people often come from, they've experienced those bad things themselves. That's true. And it does help you find empathy. But one of the things I also emphasize in my book is the importance of the choices we make on a day-to-day basis. And for me, having been through those experiences, I could have turned out quite differently. And it was those everyday choices that I wanted to be somebody else and I wanted to take a different path that really have mattered in guiding me through life. And also the importance of mindset, as you said. I mean, I like to say mindset is a muscle. And if you teach your mind to operate in a certain way, then it becomes used to operating in that way. And it really helps kind of get you through some of these difficult times.
Yeah. And if we start to think about this in the workplace, I love what I do. I work with great people. I'm a professor and I love the university. I love my colleagues at the university, but I also love the consulting work I do. I love the people in my firm that I work with. I love the leaders and executives I get to work with in other organizations. I love it. But the reality is, you get people together and there's tensions, right? And
Yeah,
hard things happen, and feelings get hurt. There are frustrations. And I think of, for example, at the university, I love the university. I love students. I love working with my colleagues, but there are frustrations that occur. And I find that it can be pretty easy to fall into negative patterns of self-talk, negative patterns of just cynicism and pessimism, and get stuck in a rut where, instead of recognizing that, most people wake up every day trying to do the best they know how, and to have a little bit of generosity towards people,
right.
and not assume bad motives when something happens that's frustrating to me, right? That's important. And if I'm not careful, I can very easily get into a rut where I'm just looking at everything through a lens of negativity. And that's not healthy. That's not good for me. It's not going to be good for my interactions with colleagues. And so I have to make a choice. I have to make a choice that I'm going to, again, not pretend like everything's rosy when it's not. There are
Right.
problems, they need to be addressed. And sometimes I'm going to be the one to voice concerns or share with people when I see an issue, and I hope that we can resolve it and work towards it, overcoming it. Those things still need to happen. But if I can do it and frame it from a standpoint of compassion, from a standpoint of empathy, from a perspective of gratitude for this amazing opportunity to work in such a wonderful
Yes.
organization with wonderful people serving wonderful students, that whole mindset shift then changes the way I am with other people, the way I interact with my team, the way I interact with others at the university, even those who I might be particularly frustrated with. And that's going to lead to better outcomes for everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say something a little bit radical, I feel like, particularly for women. And that is, for women, we're not allowed to ever get angry. We're just not. I mean, so I like to say you have to reach rage to reach forgiveness. And for me, so when we encounter these difficult people, um, I found that it actually helps to acknowledge the fact, like get in touch with my feelings and say, I am mad right now. For whatever reason, I feel disrespected. I feel I wasn't heard. I feel like this person was insensitive. But I do it in my spin class. And I will express my anger while the music is loud and nobody can hear me, and I will let it out that I am angry. I will shout. But as I do that, I acknowledge that emotion and I let it move through me. And then I've said, okay, I'm done. I've been angry. Now, how can I move past this and find a path that's a positive path to working around the situation or working through it or working with the people? But I think that sometimes we try to bury those emotions and just be like, okay, we're going to make this good. I just, you have to, acknowledge the emotion and work through it, like let it go. I mean, obviously in a healthy way, but I think we do a lot of damage to our bodies by suppressing those emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. Burying emotions is a surefire way to cause anxiety and stress, and it's going to come out, and it's almost never going to come out in a good way.
Yeah. Yes.
Either through negative coping mechanisms that we might, take on, or through blowing up at people or whatever, right? It just usually doesn't come out in a healthy way. So I love your spin class. That's awesome. A couple ways that I do the same thing. Sometimes I go down to my basement where I have a little workout set up, and I have like a heavy bag, and I can put on my boxing gloves and go at it. If I've had a particularly stressful meeting, just take it out on the bag and express. And people have different approaches to mindfulness, meditation, prayer, whatever. And this may sound sacrilegious to people, but I'm a spiritual person, and I consider myself a hopeful agnostic. I don't know that God's there, but I act as though God is there, and I pray, and I find prayer to be helpful and sustaining. But I'm not afraid to let God have it. So sometimes, I kind of unleash, and I usually do it when I'm walking my dogs at the park, and I have some kind of alone time. I'm out in nature, I'm with my dogs. And sometimes, I'm yelling at God a little bit. And again, maybe people find that sacrilegious. I find it very freeing.
Liberating. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. I mean, you're communicating with him about what's upsetting you. And I mean, I think that's, part of the process, right? I mean, God is a loving God. He's going to be listening and, helping you figure that out. So.
Yeah, that's great. And so there's a lot of different ways to do it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And do what works for you, but don't bury it, address it. Sometimes that means counseling. Sometimes that means therapy and other types of approaches. Sometimes it's just having a good friend that you can vent to, or just where you can be seen and heard. So all of those are really, really important. But then to be able to get past it, so you can move on in a healthy way is also important. So another big thing that you're working on is what you call the Gratitude Project. Tell us a little bit about that.
So probably about a decade ago, I had a girlfriend who had just had a lot of really negative career experiences, and she'd become negative Nelly, basically, and she was getting hard to be around. And so I was trying to figure out how I could help her. And in the process, I ended up helping myself. I said to her, why don't we do something? Let's call it the Gratitude Project. I said, let's have one statement of gratitude every day that we share with each other. And let's do one act of kindness or act of service every day and share that with each other and hold each other accountable. And let's do it for a month. And we did that. And what was funny is, first of all, we came to an agreement on what constituted an act of service or kindness. And since we both were already involved with philanthropy, it made us actually take stock and realize the things we were doing, because we never gave ourselves credit. We were just living with all this guilt of not doing enough, but it helped us acknowledge what we were doing. And on the days that we weren't doing something, we were actively looking for something to do, even if it was holding the door open for somebody. Or there was one night I hadn't done anything, and I was like, let me do the dishes for one of my friends. So it completely shifted our mindset towards actively looking to do things for others and actively looking, finding gratitude. And at first it was like we were saying the same, or I'm grateful for the same things again and again. And then it morphed outwards. And by the end of the month, the surprising thing by sticking to this was how it absolutely transformed our lives. And she moved from negative Nelly to a positive mindset to, by the end of the month, she had her dream job. I mean, and she's to this day has been so positive and touched so many lives. And for me, it just expanded my gratitude, and it changed my mindset and helped me realize the power of gratitude in doing things for others. And like literally, if it's holding the door open or giving up a parking spot, it's just always having that frame of mind that just is so transformative. And so in conjunction with the book, I tell that story in the book. We launched the Gratitude Project, where we actually have 30 days of gratitude prompts. And I feel like that just helps people, and then suggestions for acts of service. And we encourage people to pair up with somebody and try this for themselves. So we launched it in January, and basically we changed it so it can be, it's not attached to any particular date. It's just 30 days. But it's available for download on my website, which is carrington-smith.com. And anybody can do it. And I really encourage people to try it out, because it's surprising how something so simple, particularly when you do it with someone else and you're holding each other accountable, can absolutely change your life.
Yeah, I love that. And the simplicity of it, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be this incredibly complex thing. Just taking moments every day to reflect and to express gratitude and thanks to those around us, and to recognize the good things that are in our lives.
Yes.
To share that with your partner, your spouse, with your children, share that with your coworkers.
Yes.
Right. And just little small acts of kindness and service can go a really long way. And, so in organizations, for example, we have recognition programs, and we have a variety of different things that organizations put in place. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. And you can give bonuses, and you can have an employee of the month, and you can do whatever, right? And maybe your people value that. And that's fantastic if they do. But it doesn't need to be anything even, that structured.
No.
It's just a matter of doing simple things every day. And I think about members of my team, and, just taking a moment to let them know you're thinking of them. If
Yes.
we're working remotely, just shooting them a message, not to check in to like hover and to like micromanage, but to just check in. Hey, how are you doing? How's your day going?
Yeah.
How, maybe something about their personal life, and like, hey, how did Tommy's concert go last night? Or just like checking in with people and having those connections, those authentic connections with people, go a long way in helping people to feel valued and to be seen as a person.
That's a big one.
A whole authentic person with complex lives.
Yeah.
And so I don't always remember to do that, but when I do, I feel better. I can tell that they feel better. And it's just a small thing that may only take a couple minutes out of my day.
That thoughtfulness is just, it goes so far. I mean, it's so rare for someone to be thoughtful these days, because people are so self-involved, that when you do that, I mean, it's like a huge deposit in that, relationship bank account.
Yeah, absolutely. And those deposits build up over time, and that's how you're building trust, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
how you're building relationships. And it can happen in the workplace. I would encourage listeners to think about, like, what are some basic things you could do? Maybe you institute the gratitude project in your team. And it doesn't need to, some people might say, well, that's just warm, fluffy, fuzzy stuff, and that it's just cheesy and nobody. I mean, some people may feel that way at first, but people like to be complimented. People like to have their contributions acknowledged, and if you do it in authentic ways, I think it'll be appreciated. I don't know if you've seen the show Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
But that's something that he does so well. He's just so present with people, and everyone he's with is important to him. And he's always seeing the good in people, and he's always seeing the value that they bring, and he lets them know about it.
Yeah.
Right. And that goes such a long way to engendering gratitude and trust and commitment and loyalty, and just leads to better performance.
Absolutely. And then people want to perform for you because they feel valued and seen and heard and all of that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Carrie, it has been a pleasure. I note the time, it has flown by. We could continue, and there's so much more to talk about, but for today, we're going to have to come to a close. Before we wrap up, though, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can connect with you and find out more about your work, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Sure. Well, my personal website is carrington-smith.com, which you can find links to the book, which is also available on Amazon. And again, it's Blooming: Finding Gifts in the Shit of Life. And the Gratitude Project is also available on that website. You can also find me on all the different social media at Carrington ATX, which is for Austin, Texas. Yeah, and then my work website. So I also do executive search, and that is carringtonlegal.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Carrie. It has been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Carrie and her team can do for you. Check out the Gratitude Project, the Blooming Foundation. Check out her business, her book. I hope everyone can just foster positivity and gratitude in your life and share that with those around you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.